Okay. Positive anchors: encouragement, gratitude, confidence, purpose, resilience.
Now, when you hear those words, Miss Johnson, does it just evoke positivity or do you have to do anything with that?
Funnily enough, I have to anchor it to something else for it to become real. Because otherwise, it's just a word on a piece of paper.
Very true. Very true. Dr. Shaw, what would you say to that? Because I know with the work that you do, especially with women, and especially after you wrote your great book, Girl You Cute, and every Tuesday morning, she shares live on YouTube on her channel, Speak Your Power Now. So definitely, go check her out each and every Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. But what would you say to this as you always are building anchors or having those conversations about developing the boys?
I would have to agree with Nicole with this because once you look at this, it's not a positive or a negative thing. It's what we attach to it, the emotional association with it. And when we attach it, then it becomes a negative or a positive because the places and phases and things that we have gone through and that we have to begin to do those things. So when she just read that, we have to look at ourselves and be encouragement. Oh, I never got encouraged. You can turn that positive word of encouragement into a negative. Encouragement. Oh, I never got encouraged. That's turning that encouragement word into a negative because of your experience with the word. So, how we experience something really does anchor us in understanding who we are. And then it can turn into some of the pain, the fear, the shame, and all that stuff. So that's what I have to say to that, say to this piece in regards to that, Dr. Clark.
Well, so let me read the negative anchors now: fear, shame, avoidance, anxiety, and limiting beliefs. Now, I desire to play devil's advocate to what my wife, Dr. Cheryl Clark, just said. So, is fear the other side of encouragement, or because someone was encouraged, that means that they can turn encouragement into a negative, Dr. Cheryl?
Sorry. So, yeah, so this is actually good because fear is not the opposite of encouragement.
Mhm.
It is what someone says. So, encouragement is an experience, how you experienced encouragement, how the behavior of that. Fear is an emotional state. Shame is an emotional state. Avoidance is an emotional state. Anxiety is what happens. The behaviors of encouragement, what is it that I experience and the behaviors associated with that thing? So those things on the other side of negative anchors is not the opposite, but it's operating in that state of mind. And that's what I would have to say to that.
Excellent. We see Mr. Sampson has his hand raised. Go ahead, Mr. Sampson.
Yes, just in listening to the previous statements, fear, yeah, bring that up for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, fear can actually be a good thing
Mm.
because certain things you need to be scared of in order not to put yourself in danger. Shame, if you're doing something you know you shouldn't be, could be a good thing. Avoiding taking drugs, avoiding going into certain strip clubs, doing things you shouldn't be doing, could be a good thing, could be a good anchor. Um, Limiting beliefs in a lot of Christianity, they want you to limit your beliefs. Believe nothing but nothing outside of the word is no anything outside of the word is no good. Limit your belief. You know what I'm saying? So that brings me back to the point of yes, you definitely have to have an attachment to something because there's duality in just about everything. And I'm complete.
Excellent. It's interesting. Like if I utilize what Dr. Cheryl's thought, and it's not making her thought wrong. This is by having the healthy debate. So that means I can look at gratitude as even gratitude can be considered a negative, or maybe because I have confidence is people think assuming, and I'm going to come to you, Miss Johnson, and people assuming that my confidence is arrogance, or if I'm purposeful in my path, that means people think I'm bougie because I'm attempting to act like something else. Or if I have a certain level of resiliency because I don't get broken down because certain things may happen in other people and it may not necessarily happen in me. So on the flip side, could the positive anchors as relating back to what Dr. Cheryl alluded to be considered not necessarily positive? And Ms. Johnson, the floor is yours.
Um, hmm. That
Hmm.
last question threw me off. I didn't like it very much.
Go ahead,
Um,
go ahead, come
no,
on.
because my initial thought was going from Dr. Cheryl's explanation. So positive anchors would be action and negative anchors would be emotion. Dr. Cheryl, is that a correct assessment or am I a little off?
No, I think that you're absolutely what I'm saying, and it's not right or wrong. But what I'm saying is it's upon interpretation for each people. So let me get that clear. So depending on the person and your association with the words, this is where you may tend to have that anchor, what Dr. Clark was talking about. Confidence maybe being a positive anchor for someone, but someone that perceives confidence as you, what you said, arrogance, that's their own experience of them seeing someone with confidence, and they're perceiving it as that person is arrogant. It's someone's own interpretation of what that looks like. So I would say that, Nicole, I hope I answered that because you said it was versus emotion. Did you say that? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
action versus emotion.
Yeah, so either one could actions act you saying that if the positive anchor is action versus emotion.
Yeah, that's the meaning my brain gave to the words.
Yeah, so yeah, you can do that. You can say it that way. I'm just saying in effect of it's interpretation. If you could look at interpretation, so maybe someone never felt as though let me just give like Dr. Clark was talking about confidence. So if no one ever established what confidence was, and Dr. Clark stands in confidence, and then someone is being shamed. Now, this is the negative part of, I'm not saying the negative, but the avenue of the association of the emotion coming with the shame. Someone shamed them for being with confidence. So then they turned confidence into being arrogant. So then, therefore, I can never even stand in my confidence anymore because I may be shamed. So then that's the factor. It's a reactive emotion to what has happened to them. Does that make sense?
I mean, it does. So essentially, 1,000 people will have 1,000 different associations or anchors to these words. So
Hmm.
it's whatever, based on your life experience, gives the definition of what it is. So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes,
There's the
Dr.
only
Clark.
reason, no, the only reason why I'm bringing it up is it's a great debate, and I'm loving the fact, and that's some of the things that we stimulate here in the circle is about. It's not about being right or wrong. We're not looking for a positive or a negative per se, but what it is that too many times, especially in our Black and Brown communities, we don't have these relevant conversations about some of the things that even that we perceive to be our anchors or our rituals or our semblance. Mr. Sampson was bringing about the limiting beliefs. There were certain things that was colonized our faith or started to allow ourselves to be in a space where some of our cultural acumen that was part of our spirituality was considered negative. And you come to find out, some of the stuff that some of those, generations back in the days were doing, it's like now all of a sudden they found out the different ingredients, and now all of a sudden they trying to attempting to give you that as a pill. So it's like, wait a minute, you attempted to limit my belief about what my forefathers and foremothers did, and then now all of a sudden you find that that same stuff that they were able to find in, wherever the respective area they found the root or the basis point of what it is, and now all of a sudden now you're attempting to resell it to me as this. And so I can understand where Miss Johnson is coming from, because at times when we stand in our confidence, and I can bring that back to my own personal story. I remember growing up in the Bronx, being able to go to I would say, decent high schools, District 9 in New York City, and then eventually going to Brooklyn Tech. There were times that even people in our neighborhood would look at some of us, or some of us who made it, to go to some of these respective campuses of learning. Oh, y'all trying to be like white people, or are you trying to do this? And it was like, wait a minute, it was almost like a pushback. Like, I thought you would desire for us to move and become smarter. So as we were invoking our confidence, there were people who were attempting to minimize our confidence. Now we had to make a choice, and I know I had to make a choice to say, am I going to listen to what they say, or am I going to believe in myself? And so even when we're dealing with peer influences or peer pressure, we still have a personal responsibility. And sometimes that wasn't necessarily galvanized in our community to recognize, like, wait a minute, don't question God. Not that you're questioning God, but God gives you the ability to say, ask something if you don't understand. Don't just sit there and just keep doing something in a ritualized space without saying, like, wait a minute, why are we doing this? And that's why sometimes you can respect other communities where there are certain times out of the year, even the children can sit there and ask, the eldest of the family, be like, yo, why do we do this? Why do we do that? So I can have an understanding. And so at times, what we may perceive as anchors, regardless if you feel that they're positive or negative, they can be utilized. And you can make a choice to say, when we look at some of the things that I have listed under negative anchors, like limiting beliefs, I don't deal with limiting beliefs. I recognize who I serve, who I know my spirituality is connected to, is still ever expansive. So for me to move in a limited space, to me, is negating what I believe. It becomes a double entendre, and that doesn't make any sense. But these are some of the things that we are very much conditioned to and end up being anchored in. And then we start to recognize, as I said in the statement on the bottom, part of personal growth involves recognizing which anchors influence us. And it's not to make anxiety wrong. Anxiety is not wrong. Anxiety is a space that it is what it is. Now, I know if I go from a spiritual standpoint, it says, do not be anxious for anything. So why am I moving anxiously if I was part of my guide, belief, and rule tells me that I shouldn't be anxious for anything? So sometimes we have to look at our respective conditioning, probably as we look at nature versus nurture. We can see those things that may have been applied upon us. And then after a while, we have to make the distinction and the difference within ourselves to say, am I going to accept that as who I am or what I am, or I'm going to recognize that I'm going to do something else? Any thoughts by anyone? This is a great conversation. Any thoughts? Anything from you, Dr. Shara?
Yeah, I will say this. Um, there are some of us that have not had that school of thought in regards to how we can begin to be anchored in certain things, because a lot of people have been raised with limiting thoughts. And because if you're not anchored in certain things that we have conversations with, I know in my household, um, I couldn't say what I believe without getting popped in my mouth. So for conversations that are deciding, this is where I see where just a debate about, is it positive or negative? I think it becomes an awareness of the interpretation, especially in the brown and black home in the communities, that we didn't always have the luxury to have a conversation even in our homes. So the beliefs became and the rituals and all that other stuff and the messages that we were shaped in, now that we can see that, oh, don't be disrespectful. And you were raised in a space of, say what you think, Greg, it's okay, you can do that. And you weren't punished for it. You was able to do that. And in some households, we were not able to do that. And, you had the privilege to be able to, do that. But in some interpretations of that, the anchor is, children, exactly, as Ernest, what Prophet Samson's put in there, children are to be seen and not heard. And we had to relearn that. So now we're in spaces where some of us do have limiting beliefs. I didn't become, my value didn't become until I became into the spaces where I went into higher education to understand it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to be with other cultures and to be able to say that. So it's not for me when I get into these spaces, it's not a positive or a negative. It's just this, what it is. And now I have to be aware of how I can shift it so I can be with other conversations and I'm complete.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. And I appreciate the debate that was stimulated by this slide because it gives us an opportunity to recognize, like I said before, it's not about who's right or who's wrong. But when you start to hear and articulate, and that's why being in the ability to articulate your thoughts and to be in conversation, you start to allow yourself not so much to be influenced, but to recognize that what is the pattern of your speech or what is the thing that may have been ritualized in your words that now you have the ability to articulate and see, you know, does it work for you or it doesn't work for you? And it's okay if it doesn't work for you, because then you have the ability of choice to say, wait a minute, I'm going to change this. You're not stuck. You're not pigeon-toed to say, wait a minute, because we keep doing this like this is how we're going to do it. Now, if that's what you choose to do, now it's not necessarily you being stuck, because now you're making a conscionable choice. And sometimes we even have to recognize that with some of our anchors. Some of our anchors are choice. And if you don't like it, choose ye this day. Choose another way. Choose another day. Choose another part that you can do. If you think something that you're avoiding, which is true, you can avoid certain things, but as you continue to self-stimulate yourself and speak that life and speak into that space where you develop, we're going to come to you, Dr. Clarke. When you allow yourself to speak yourself into that space, then all of a sudden those things that may have been things that were negative can start be rooted out, because remember, the subconscious mind does not take a joke. And there are times the greatest person that you have to speak to, and I know my wife does mirror work, especially with the women, the greatest person you have to speak to is yourself. Because if you're not going to generate that space out of you, I don't care who it is, I don't care if it's your mother, grandmother, husband, spouse, wife, whomever, they can't do it for you. They can be a part of what you're doing, but they can't do it for you. Yes, Dr. Shaw.
I'm gonna say this in my opinion of working with the mirror method and how many times they got to do it over and over
Mm-hmm.
and over again
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes they didn't even think they had a choice. And sometimes they stay in relationships that demean them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they don't feel like they have to stay in an unfulfilling position because that's all they have, and they think that's all they have. And sometimes it just takes somebody to continue to pour into them and spaces like this to say there is something there is choice. We all have choice. And I'm complete.
Excellent, excellent. That's a great segue to cement this particular slide. Okay, creating intentional anchors. Examples include your daily reflection, your gratitude practices, and affirmations. Dr. Shaw, what would you say to that? And that goes back to what you're saying about the mirror effort. Is daily reflections and affirmations appropriate or positive?
Yes, but they're not enough because you can do that. That works. But in understanding what you do, the declaration, like I do that every morning. But the declaration and the affirmations is not enough. It's not enough. You have to do applied behavior. So you can say one thing, but like take you. So you know that you can say in the mirror, "Oh yes, my sugar is I have control over my diabetes." And then you go and you eat tons of bread,
Mhm.
tons of things that will not help your diabetes. It turns into yeast, and then you sit down and you watch TV, and then you're not moving and you're not doing this. The affirmations that you're saying is great, but without applied behaviors or change behaviors, it's not going to do anything. So I would say that when you're making this an application, that's one of the things that you can do. You can stand in the mirror and declare. But in order for you to begin to do that, it has to align with your behaviors. And as you continue to do that, you can begin to see yourself in a space where you're moving towards that. So, yes, affirmations can change mindset, of course, but behaviors can create evidence that it's a lasting change. And I'm complete.
Excellent. And that moves us to visual reminders. For some of us, it could be music and prayer or your meditations, and prayer is not just praying to God. And sometimes we get that misconstrued that, you're there's so many times that our very words are prayers. The very thing that we're speaking about, what we're working on or what we're developing, or even, what we're speaking over our respective businesses. Those are prayers. People just assume that, oh, prayer means I'm going for the throne of grace. And no, 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 no. You're praying. There's so many times that you don't recognize that your words are prayer and praying over your business. So those visual reminders of, certain things, certain music, brings you back to a particular time. That's an anchor. For people when they use certain faith music, they use that as an anchor. Some people meditation and do their towers and get to their space of Zen. That's their part of their visual reminder of connecting back with the daily reflection, as Dr. Cheryl Clarke was alluding to. It's not just saying, okay, I'm just going to be stuck in the middle with the visual reminders. And then what are your practices? That's why it's gratitude practices with the daily reflection. When we just start to recognize that, certain things are moving in a particular space, what are you glad about? I remember there were times that my wife would look at me and say, it seems like you were angry. She says, what are you mad about? And then after a while, I had to really look within myself. I couldn't just point the finger back at my wife and say, oh my God, why are you just. And then I have to pause, like, wait a minute, before I can elicit a word and say that she's nagging me, wait a minute. Is it my perspective? Is it my outlook? Is it just how I'm feeling? And then after a while, I had to do the self regulation. Now, she brought that to maybe a space of bringing it to my frontal lobe. But after a while, she couldn't even do the work for me, just the same way I couldn't do the work for her. So, those visual reminders are something to add. That's why it's three parts. Those visual reminders are there to accentuate with your daily reflection, because this is a daily process. This is not you do it one day, or like you join us here for the circle meetings and all of a sudden, the other 6 days I'm going to walk around negative. It's like, no, this takes work. This takes responsibility, and it leads to that last part with healthy routines, which are your consistent habits. Now, the thing about it is that as I was working on this, I started to recognize certain consistent habits may not necessarily be healthy. Just the same way that we did the debate about on the previous slide about, negative and positive anchors. Because Dr. Clarke brought up a very distinctive point. If I'm a diabetic and I'm sitting there eating the stuff that I know that got me into the space that brought me into a particular level, and I sit there and consistently do that, that becomes a habit. And that habit becomes detrimental. So now those healthy routines is about how can you reinforce those spaces that you desire. And that's my main point of this slide. When you look at the final sentence, intentional practices can reinforce desired states over time. That means we make choices. Those intentional practices are choices. And it's interesting that, sometimes it's simply saying, choose ye this day. What is your choosing power? Are you choosing to pray over your business that it continues to be successful? Are you continuing to pray for wisdom so that I can do the things that I need to do? Are you going to continue to meditate on those areas where even if things are not moving the way you desire it, you are still keeping the focused mindset to say, I'm speaking life, and keep reiterating those words so it can get down into your subconscious state? It takes work. It takes time. It's not no one trick pony. It's not no one size fits all. We all have our respective and different ways of how we're navigating our respective pathways. But the great thing about community is that you can bring it into a space of community where now we can have those relevant conversations. It's not that we're pointing fingers at people. We recognize this. Oh, okay, so that's your viewpoint. Okay, and here's mine. And here's the reason why I desire. These are my desires, or this is my viewpoint. Now, once again, what are your viewpoints? Do our viewpoints align? Are we at least going in the right direction where, regardless of your particular distinction and I'm a particular distinction, we still can be going in the same direction? Don't necessarily have to be in the same path. And so, even at times, we have to check our habits to make sure that our habits are working for us. Because our habits can be working against us if we're allowing ourselves those choices to be in spaces where the desired state that you're looking for over time is not being realized. It's like doing the same crazy thing over and over again, looking for a new result. And then turn around and says, well, that's just me. No, you've accepted that. You've become conditioned with that from last week's teaching. That means you're conditioned to say, wait a minute, the reason why you're not moving forward is because you've accepted and have chosen to say that I can't create intentional anchors so that I can move in a particular way. That to me is where the cop out comes into play. And the reason why I call it a cop out, because now you have chosen. Maybe you can't say it, maybe I won't say the word cop out. You have chosen. You have chosen to minimize yourself. You have chosen to always be in a space where things, it seems like you're borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. No. It starts with intentional practices, which means your choices. And your anchors, you can choose. Now, anchors as a child, because we were being developed, parents, stuff like that, there's back and forth times. Even Dr. Cheryl Clarke, she shared it on her platform. She'll say that, I have some qualities like my mother. And I have to admit, yeah, there's probably certain things that I were influenced and I was imprinted upon. But after a while, as I started to develop who Gregory is, so as I recognize, yeah, there's some influences, but at the same time, but I'm not that. And we have to recognize, what are we considering our intentional anchors? Our modus operandi, the way that we do things. And we have the ability every single day to recognize we see something that does not work. And even though we're doing it consistently, we need to change. That's the worst case scenario. That's why they consider Black and brown people, even now during these economic times, we're still the number one consumers. Because by the time we get some resources in our hand, it's leaving our community. Now, when are we all going to start to make those intentional choices to say, wait a minute, I'm intentionally making sure some of my dollars go over here. I'm intentionally making sure some of my dollars go over there. Now, we know it's a big economy and diaspora things. Okay, certain things you can't do everything. But after a while, when you start making those intentional practices, i.e. choices, then You're having more of a control of your decision making for the long term over time. Habits and our lifestyles built over time, but it always starts with our anchors. It starts with our awareness. It starts what we're choosing to do. Just a thought. State management. What happened to me, or what state am I practicing every day? Now, what happened to me is all the stuff from your past self. And that's why we're talking about it from a state management space. We have, each one of us is considered like a world. You're your own entity of as a state, your state of being. What are you choosing? Are you choosing what happened to you? Because see, if you keep choosing what happened to you, that means there's a part of you that keeps reliving it and re-experiencing it and bringing it up to the forefront. Now, we know that those anchors could be good and some of those anchors could be bad. Some of those anchors could be downright disgusting, terrible, distasteful. And it's good not to forget, but we have to recognize what type of state are you utilizing that. And see, it brings me to I think about Oprah. Oprah used the fact of certain things that happened in her childhood, which was disgusting, distasteful, but in the long term and over time, she turned that energy into $1 billion career from some of those things that she experienced that was disgusting. Same way that other people who may have experienced certain things and they were able to, now some may not have. But what I'm saying is, we do have examples of people who have experienced things that we would consider detrimental and distasteful, and they had a choice to say, what type of state am I going to move in? What is the state of being? What state am I practicing every day? Instead of asking only the first question, also ask the second question. Repeated states gradually influence long term habits. You are responsible for your state management. I know other people may say, no, that's not true, or no, but I'm here in this platform to let you know I'm here to break the fallacies and the fantasies. Because ultimately, we can recognize and respect and honor the fact that certain things have happened to you. We're not minimizing it. We're not throwing it away. We're not telling you to forget. No, 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 no. Don't forget. But what state are you practicing every day? Are you moving in your past self? Are you allowing that id to always come and influence all your decision making and it's screwing up your adult life? Or do you recognize, like, wait a minute, I experienced certain things that weren't great, weren't positive, and we all have. Ain't none of us can sit here and say, oh my God, I had the perfect life. No. Of course we experience crap that we can go back to, like, nah, I didn't like that. No, I didn't like that experience. I didn't like that loss. I didn't like this. I didn't like that. But me remembering it or moving as my practicing state daily is two different things. Dr. Cheryl, do you have any thoughts about this? Because knowing you as a psychotherapist, do you have any thoughts about this?
Well, just a state of, in regards to, I think you hit on the nose in regards to the state of being who you are. One subtotal, sometimes we can get stuck there. So it's important for us to get people around us to get us unstuck and to get us in the space of that. And me understanding of seeing tons and tons of people, men and women, children, understanding that one traumatic event can keep you really stuck in that space. And if I can take you, what you just said about, you mentioning your mom, uh, there's certain things that you have adapted unbeknownst to you. And it's not it's the way I will say it to you if you would be receptive enough. And the relationship have to be safe enough that I can be able to tell you that you're not feeling as though this is a attack. And sometimes people are in relationships that they can't be candid with their spouse or their significant other or their siblings, and they go away from the relationship hurt and not able to be in the space of understanding how to build healthy relationships. And I'm complete.
Excellent. So remember, we're not, Dr. Gregory Clarke is not telling you to relive what happened to you. That's not what I'm saying. Dr. Gregory Clarke is not telling you to forget about those things, good and or bad or detrimental. Let's call it adverse instead of using the word bad. We had those things that were healthy and we loved and we wouldn't mind experiencing, and we had those adverse things. You can remember both. Because as we recognize, for a yin and a yang to happen, there has to be balance. There's not only just darkness, there's light. And too many times, as part of the fallacies and fantasies that were proposite, positioned on our respective communities, almost as if, oh my God, darkness is a bad thing. No, some of the greatest things happen in the dark. Each time my wife brought forth one of our 6 children, that happened through a space of darkness before those children were able to see the light. Why would you think darkness is bad? Darkness is positioned because it's meant to anchor you to say, wait a minute, so that means anything dark, black, brown, that must be. There's nothing wrong with that. When we go to rest at night, or you allow yourself to go to theta and REM sleep, and you're allowing yourself to rest. So you can get into that space of darkness so you can be revitalized for the morning. Those are not bad things. So remember about what state that you're practicing every single day, not some days, not the days that you think that you're supposed to be looking good for someone. No. It's not about looking good, because you can look good. And as they say, you can have $1 million suit on and have 2 pennies in your pocket. Whereas technically it should be the reverse. I'd rather you have on a $5 t-shirt, some $10 jeans from the respective, secondhand store, and some shoes on your feet, and all of a sudden, but you have enough resources that you're making a positive influence in your community. And like I said, I like my nice stuff. So I'm going to continue to get my nice stuff. But there has to be balance. What state am I practicing every day? Vitally important. It's about balance. Yin and yang, it's balance. And once you start to get the balance, you start to recognize, oh, wait a minute, okay. It's okay to debate. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to articulate. It's okay to make sure that my voice is heard. Because I'm understanding and respecting the type of space that I'm in and state that I'm in. Triggering the soul. Ms. Johnson, can you read the paragraph next to the image, please? Triggering the soul.
Imagine an application that helps users cultivate positive habits through the aim is to intentionally reinforce constructive patterns rather than relying on unconscious conditioning.
Now, as Dr. Cheryl alluded to earlier, these 6 parts are all a part of it. It's not one against the other or one more than the other. These are things that you have to start to do to start to intentionally reinforce constructive patterns, not deconstructive patterns. Because those deconstructive patterns, our subconscious state will easily absorb them the same way that it will accept the constructive ones. But as we have learned, especially with the meaning-making machine that we have in our skulls, those things are really much developed over time. And then at times, media can be a reinforcement of certain things. And then even though you may see something or hear something, you still have to rely on the facts like, wait a minute, whoa, whoa. There's but so much I'm allowing into my unconscious space. So I'm being conscious about knowing that when I'm seeing and delving and speaking and experiencing, it's eventually going to get to my unconscious space. So I could be saying certain things that I'm keep representing to myself that's not beneficial. But when you become intentional with it, that's the power. Intentionality lets you know that you're choosing. And I didn't recognize how powerful this is when that simple statement in the Bible saying, choose ye this day. Simple. It's very, very simple, but it's so powerful. And the fact of the matter is that we are choosing every day. If we're choosing to complain about money, then what you're going to do is your unconscious state is going to say, well, that means money shouldn't come to you. I wouldn't go someplace where people are always complaining and everything's a complaint. Of course, you may have access, but will it stay? There's a big difference. And that's why, as African Americans and Latinos, we're the number one consumers. Because why? We get resources, but does it stay? Whereas other communities, they circulate as well, but all of a sudden they still have more to show for it. What are they choosing? That we have the ability to choose. And the reason why it's triggering the soul, because remember that unconscious state is connected to that aura, that essence of who we are. That thing that allows us to stay connected to the Most High, regardless of how you express it or say the Most High is to you. With those daily prompts, your guided reflections, your identity statements, what are you saying about yourself? The visualization, what is it that you see for yourself, your business, your family, your people, your community? Your goal reminders, yes. Even if you have a goal of making $500 a day, which means that would translate into you making $15,000 a month. And not every day you make the goal, but if you keep that reminder in front of you, because I remember, and Dr. Cheryl Clarke still has some of those things downstairs as reminders, but I remember there was a time as we were delving in and growing the businesses and things like that, she would keep those big ass, yes, I said it, post-it notes up there, but it was a great anchoring skill because you keep that thing in your face to say, wait a minute, this is what we need to generate per day so we can hit a particular goal. And especially now as we're getting back into those respective spaces, those are some powerful reminders and choosing possibilities that allow you to say, wait a minute, okay, we need to, okay, what did we was able to generate today? What was we able to, bring into the fold? Because we know that we have these responsibilities and these possibilities and this and that and third. Okay, we need that friendly reminder. Okay, we need to be making X amount of, okay, so how are we hitting this goal? What are we doing today to make sure we hit the goal? Because there may be some days that we may not hit the goal. And even those days are okay because then you have to assess what happened. Now, your unconscious state or is starting to recognize like, wait a minute, okay, there's an ebb and flow that's happening here. It's not just negative. It's not just doom and gloom. It's not just, oh my God, what's going on? It's nothing to be scared of. It's like, wait a minute, okay. We're growing and going through the process. In progress tracking. For certain businesses, they do it on a daily. Certain people do it weekly. Some people do it monthly. If you have or work for a traded company, they have quarterly reports. But even then, they're looking at tracking, what do they make daily? I know Walmart is one of the main ones, Amazon, and most upper echelon corporations do this. They're tracking, okay, what did we generate today? And it's not about just trying, to be gloating about how much money we have. No, no, no. It's about recognizing, okay, what did we do here? What did we reinvest back in marketing? What's the advertising budget? What do we need resources? What is going on there? How much do we have to circulate to keep this thing going, this flywheel going? So all six of these parts are very necessary to have a successful path, not just only in business, but you personally. Remember, this is the business of living. It's not just about dollars and cents. It's the business of living. What type of daily prompts are you speaking life over to yourself with? What type of guided reflection are you having over your life? What do you identify as? What are you visualizing for yourself? What are the goals that you have for yourself personally? And how are you tracking that progress? It's not necessarily just about business. It's about recognizing the full man and woman. So as you're triggering your soul for progress. The dynasty reflection. Dr. Cheryl, can you read that big sentence, please?
Um, you're no longer sharing.
I'm
Maybe
not.
it's me. I don't know. Nicole, is he sharing?
Yeah, click the other tab. You're probably in the meeting tab.
Oh, hold on. Let Nicole read it because I'm not.
Sure.
No.
Every day we reinforce something.
The question is, what are we strengthening? What are you reinforcing daily? What is it that you are generating in space? And it's okay. We crack jokes. We have our respective viewpoints. Having an opinion is not something that's a bad thing. It's good to have an opinion. There's nothing wrong with having an opinion. Have your opinion. But your opinion shouldn't be just the thing that you're reinforcing. What are your actions? What are your habits? What's the lifestyle? What is it that you desire out of this thing called life? Because this is a business of living. I know people say, oh, I'm just here to. No, you're not here just to exist. Because if you're here to exist, that means someone else is controlling your choices. Someone is telling you when you can do this and when you can do that. And then after a while, if you don't like that type of life, then you have to start to make the requisite choices to say, wait a minute, what can I do so I can have more autonomy and more control over who I am? So every day we are reinforcing something. We can be reinforcing the adverse, we can be reinforcing the positive. And either way, ultimately, you are making the choice of what that is. Because some people can feel always moving around in an anxious space is positive for them. I got always be in fear. Why you always got to be in fear? Why you always got to be scared? And even in times where you hear certain mantras, do it scared. That's true, but it's not about doing it scared that you're, over simplifying every move. No, because now you're micromanaging. But do it scared is like after a while you have to take the fear, as we showed earlier in one of the previous slides, and recognize, yeah, there's some fear in me, but I'm still going forward anyway. I have enough sense and sensibility to recognize, like, yo, yeah, that's a big risk. So what are we doing? We're going forward. Then all of a sudden you turn that fear, which could have been stifling and keeping you in a space where you won't do anything, and all of a sudden it's like, you know what? I had to do it afraid. I'm happy I did. I had to make that leap. I'm happy that I did. Not only for myself, but then my children's children are happy that I made that leap. That I made those choices. Everything's going to work? No, it's life. Is every single idea that you're going to come up with is going to be that grand slam? No, no, and no. And that's not cementing the word no as a negative. No, it's just recognizing, like, wait a minute, it's throwing darts at a wall. You come up with an idea and we see how does it work. Some ideas work better than the others. Some ideas won't work. But that's part of the process of development. And that's why when we recognize every day we reinforce something, you have to look within yourself to understand what are you reinforcing on a daily basis. Because whatever it is that you're reinforcing, that's what you're strengthening. And the worst case scenario is could be strengthening lack. Could you be strengthening the fact that I can't do this? Like, who told you to strengthen that? After a while, you have to know, change the reinforcement, make a different choice. And you do have that ability to do so if you so choose. And with that, we are complete. Any takeaways? Any thoughts? Any takeaways? Any thoughts? Would love some insight, some feedback. Any takeaways? Any thoughts?
Yes, Dr. Clarke, just appreciate you putting language to the actions because we don't go through, at least me personally, don't go through daily thinking about anchors. So thank you for giving language to it.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
And I would say was a really good um, comeback conversation. We came back and said a couple of things back to Dr. Clark, so which is good, where everybody have a perspective. And I think that in our community, if we get more of these conversations going, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to give comments. It's okay to be in the conversation. And that's what I think is happening here. When we don't speak, that's when we don't get our voice in the matter. And I'm complete.
Excellent. Anyone else? Anyone else?
Dr. Clark, hi.
Hey, Miss McIntyre, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. What's
Yeah.
your thoughts about what you caught?
Great conversation, much needed, um, just all around, especially in our community.
Mm,
When you see negative anchors that have become just a way of life.
mm,
And I think Dr. Cheryl, she referred to that earlier, how we were socialized, how we were raised.
mm,
And if you're not in that space where it's being challenged, you don't know that it's negative.
mm,
So there's a lack of not knowing that, I see around us. People just, what we take for granted or certain way of thinking that is just normalized in our environment. When I say our environment, it's that's not popular thinking, especially when you look at different socio-economic groups, it's not popular thinking.
mm.
So when negative anchors have become a way of life, it's challenging to change. So it's a great conversation. It's put you in a place of deep reflection just for yourself, and also looking at your community at large. Yeah. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Appreciate that. Excellent, excellent, excellent. And as we're going to respect everyone's time, we got some great busy people here, and busy is not a bad thing. So once again, to support the circle, we invite you to become a part of the circle, and not just from the financial space, but to join us each and every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And eventually we'll probably start doing some more. We'll see how it goes. I know myself and Dr. Cheryl Clark, we're going to be doing some things where we're going to be much more visible. And but to support this platform, you have the ability to do it via Cash App at $ Gregory Clarke D Min. Also, if you're doing it via Venmo, just drop the $ or, and that's Gregory Clarke D Min via Venmo. And if you're choosing to support the platform via Zelle or PayPal, it's the same email address, esquire971@gmail.com. Now, I can't wait for next week because, we're going to complete this arc. And it's a great conversation because we have to recognize from last week awareness, and this week we dealt with anchors, and next week we start to bring everything to a very definitive space, because these are the type of conversations that we need to recognize is not that you're putting yourself above anyone, but you're recognizing that you're choosing yourself daily and those things that are not workable for you. And we're here as a community to work together to make sure that you can start to remove those and replace them with other different anchors. So this is Dr. Gregory Clarke Sr. signing off, saying have a great week, be powerful, be positive, and continue to speak life, especially to yourself. Have a great week. See you next week.
Yeah, good night to everyone.
Good night.
Night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, all.